Would you like to have better boundaries? Hi, my name is Bruno Sade from brunosade.com, and today I'm going to talk about how to use EFT to improve our personal boundaries. Now, there are many ways to define what a personal boundary is, but one definition that makes sense to me is that our boundaries, among other things, allow us to say no to ourselves or to other people, accept being told no in a graceful way, and avoid suffering trying to control the uncontrollable. In today's video, I'll talk about how to use EFT to improve our ability to say no to other people. Now, what is it that makes it difficult sometimes to say no to other people? Well, for once, our emotions can sometimes get in the way. And why is it that sometimes our emotions can get in the way of saying no to other people? Sometimes it might have to do with previous times in our lives when something bad happened as a result of saying no to someone else. Maybe we were punished by our parents, by a boss, by a friend, etc. Maybe it has to do with the culture that we live in. Some cultures are more accepting of saying no to other people, other cultures aren't so much. Now, how can we use EFT to diminish or release the anxiety, fear, guilt, shame, and other emotions that might get in the way of being able to say no to someone else? I find it very useful to, first of all, think about someone specific in your life that you would like to say no to, and to come up with a sort of future scenario of how that might play out in your mind. And what feelings or emotions do you notice coming up for you as you imagine that taking place? So there are basically two questions that can help us come up with these future events to tap on with EFT. One is to ask ourselves what could go wrong during the moment itself where we might say no to the other person. Are we imagining a phone conversation with the person we want to say no to? Are we imagining a face-to-face conversation with this person? And let's say it's a face-to-face conversation with a friend of mine that I want to say no to something he's asking me to do that I don't want to do. As I imagine that moment when I'm trying to say no to him, what do I notice coming up for me as I imagine that? Maybe I imagine the look on his face, how angry he might get, or how disappointed he might get, or how nervous I might feel in that moment. And as I imagine each of these different aspects of this future event, what emotion comes up for me now? So that gives you a starting place to begin tapping. So an example might be, even though as I imagine telling him that I don't want to go play soccer with him next weekend, and I imagine the look of disappointment in his face, that makes me feel really guilty. And I feel this guilt in my chest area, except this is what I'm feeling right now. So as usual, when tapping on future events or any event in general, after each round, you want to make sure to think about that event again. Notice if it's the same emotion that's coming up, maybe it's a different emotion, maybe it's a different aspect of that event that you're focusing on now. For example, the look on his face, the tone of his voice, how I might be feeling in that moment, etc. And sometimes what might also happen is that as you start tapping on those future events, a previous memory might come to mind, and then you can decide whether you want to tap on that memory or not. If it came up, it's probably connected. And then the other question to help us come up with future events is what might happen as a result or as a consequence of having said no. So again, with this example with a friend, maybe then I imagine that the next time I see this friend at work, I say, hey, how is it going? How are you? And he gives me the silent treatment. He doesn't respond to me at all. And when I imagine that happening, it makes me feel really sad. So a set statement would be, even though when I imagine saying hi to him and he doesn't respond at all, he's giving me the silent treatment, that makes me feel really sad. And I feel this sadness in my chest. This is what I'm noticing right now. So these two questions, what might go wrong during the moment of saying no to a specific person or afterwards, like the aftermath of having said no, they can be very useful questions to come up with future events, which are often a great starting point for a tapping session. A third question might be something like, why does it feel like it's not okay for me to say no to this person? Where did I learn that? Let's say in a different example that I would like to be able to say no to my boss, But sometime in my past, I learned that you are supposed to always obey your boss unconditionally, to respect hierarchies no matter what, etc. And maybe it's something that my dad would always tell me when I was a kid. So one possibility is, as I remember one of the times when my dad told me that, how does that make me feel now? And I could tap on how it makes me feel now. Or yes, as I imagine the future event, the future possibility of saying no to my boss, I'm thinking that this is something that goes against what my dad taught me. How does that make me feel now? And I tap on that. So an example, even though as I imagine next Tuesday saying no to my boss's request that I don't agree with, it goes against what my dad would tell me, that you are supposed to always obey your boss no matter what. And in this moment, that makes me feel guilty. And I feel this guilt in my throat area. And this is what I'm noticing right now. So that would be an example of a setup statement. So to recap, in order to improve our ability to say no to other people with EFT, we can tap on the unpleasant emotional charge that comes up for us when we imagine either the actual moment of saying no to that person, or the aftermath or the consequences of doing so, or even the reasons why we think or we feel it's not okay to say no to them. So that's it for today. I hope this was useful, and I look forward to seeing you again in one of my next videos.